Okay, I'm gonna put my hat on because it's cold. All right. So, hey everybody, how y'all doing? I hope y'all are doing great. As far as what we're gonna talk about, we are diving right back in. We're gonna pick up as if we never left off, right where we left off. So, step into the ring. What we're doing in this series, if you're just now joining us, we have been working on a series called Step Into the Ring, where we are stepping into the Tosa's culture, the history, the origin, the purpose, and the modern day, so that we can better understand the dogs in the present and hopefully create a better future for them. If I was to break this series down into categories, there'd be a few different categories of information. All the videos up to this point were talking about we were talking about the breed in general. We were giving you an introduction into the breed, letting you see some of the stuff that's really strange about this fighting breed, you know, and kind of putting a introduction out there, really just looking at the Tosa from a bird's eye perspective. And I hope that the information we showed right off the bat was something that helped to explain and make clear that the Tosa is pretty much like nothing you've heard of before. So, that first section being the intro to the breed, shot across the bow, general information teaser, so to speak. This section is where we actually get to work. We're going to talk about the culture, we're going to talk about the people, we're going to talk about the history, and we are going deep. So what I'm going to try to do is go slower through this section, break it down, and kind of tie things together. Apparently my nose has decided that it's going to be stopped up today, so I don't really know what to do with that. I apologize for all the sniffles, but we're going to get through this. We're going to talk about this because it's amazing stuff. It's wonderful stuff. So, talking about the people, talking about the history, talking about the culture, I'm going to break this section down even more into three major parts. There might be more, but three. The history and culture of Japan in general, the Tosa and the samurai, and then the Tosa and the sumo. And then from there, we'll talk more about the Tosa proper. But there's a lot that needs to be understood in these sections first, before anything is covered about the dog. So, I hope this works. I hope it makes sense. I hope it's good. All right. Oh, by the way, I have tea. Don't judge me. I love tea. All right. Okay, so we're going to talk about, in this first section, we're talking about Japanese culture and history. I don't want to get this information wrong. Please feel free to fact check me. Anybody who's from Japan or knows Japanese culture, history, etc., feel free to fact check me on any of this, because I'm giving the best information I can find and trying to fact check it as best as I can. But I will not pretend like I'm perfect. But anyway, Japanese culture is a really, it goes back far, very far. And then prior to that, the island was inhabited by people who had lived there predating written history. You know, so think ancient, like way back. When it comes to how it all started, where the Japanese people came from, like the modern day Japanese people came from, where you know, where all that kind of intertwines and how all that goes. There's a lot of really good information on that. I'm going to exclude a lot and just kind of jump all the way forward to a certain point in time, because again, I'm trying to stick to the information that I think is relative to the Tosa, or at least interesting as it could relate to the Tosa. So we're going to stick to that. I'm going to skip way forward to about 900 AD. So we're going to skip forward to, let's see here. The year is, actually we're skipping forward, not that far forward. We're skipping forward to the years 710 to 794 AD. That period is called the Nara Period in Japan. And right quick, we're going to talk about periods. We're going to talk about eras right quick. When it comes to how you divide up expanses of time, it's going to be kind of subjective, really anywhere you look in history. But as far as Japan is concerned, as far as we're using it in this series, and what little knowledge and understanding I have to impart, just look for the names, look for the people, look for the major events, and that's how you'll know what the takeaway is from that era, what person we're following, how to best understand what time period we're in, and how that affected the culture and the country, and again, ultimately, the dogs themselves, right? Right. 710 to 794 AD, the Nara period. Now, this period, there were quite a few things that happened in this period, but there's really only one thing that we're taking away from this period, which is a contrast to all the other periods, pretty much. We're going to talk about, I got like 20-something pages of notes on other periods, but for this period, it's really just one line, one sentence. So I'm going to read that. We're going to talk about it. So, the Nara period, 710 and 794, was most noted because of the droughts that was going on in that period, the nationwide droughts. There was starvation, there was famine, there was a lot going on. During that time is when Buddhism started to reach a greater level of acceptance. Now, from what I understand, there were many missionaries, many Buddhist missionaries, Buddhist monks, etc., that were trying to come to Japan and spread Buddhism prior to that. But as far as that period, when it coincided with the droughts, people kind of felt like the droughts were happening because of what they believed was sin and wrongdoings and sinful living. So Buddhism came as an answer to a problem that people were perceiving. So that's when Buddhism started to really kind of get going. And I include that information because I found it interesting that it showed kind of the religious sensitivity of the culture, of the people, and the things that they value and thought were important, and how they sought to solve that problem. Now, you might say, Corey, this has nothing to do with Tosas. You might not say that. You might say, hey, that already taught me something. I don't know. But I found it important, I found it interesting, and therefore I included it. But let's put a pin in that. It will come up again later. All right. So, that is literally it. Like, y'all thought that was it. Y'all thought I was playing when I said that was it. It's really just one line. Like, if you look, I don't know if y'all can see it, but yeah, if you look on there, I don't know if y'all have seen it very well, but if you look on there, you can see there's really only one line with the Nara period. And then we move on to the Heian period. I might not be pronouncing that right. Heian, Heian period. This is running from 794, immediately following the Nara period, all the way to 1185 AD. So, there's some things that are relevant in this period we're going to talk about. Bear with me, I'm going to be looking down and trying to read and chat with y'all at the same time, so it's going to get interesting. Don't try this at home. All right. Anyway, 794. So like we said, in the Nara period, there was a famine that was caused by droughts, and Buddhism kind of came as the answer to what was perceived as the problem, the sinfulness of the people. Buddhism provided them a way to atone and pay for the sins committed in the time that caused the issue in the first place, right? Right. So, shortly after the start of the Heian Period, in the years 812 through 814, there's a smallpox epidemic that causes a 50% population reduction. And I just want to say, there are 300 million people in America living in America right now. Imagine 50%, like full on, what's his face? Thanos came to America, snappy snap, and I mean, I'm looking around, I'm driving here on the road, half of these cars disappeared. Half of the people, like, working in the grocery stores and all that other kind of stuff, people running the town, judges, police officers, so on and so forth. 1 out of every 2 people in existence, like that, gone. This is not the first, and as I understand it, it is not the last great catastrophic event for the country. When it comes down to it, different rules for different cultures are going to be specific to the people and the experience of the country. So when you think about here in the West, when you think about what is a law, what is a good law, what is a principle, what is a good thing to do, you may not realize just how much of your experience and what you think are good and sensible and reasonable laws and all that other kind of stuff is based on your country's experience and not on what is a good rule worldwide. So for instance, in certain parts of Spain, I'm not sure if it's still illegal, but it had been illegal for quite some time for women to put their purse on the back of their chair when they sit down to eat in a public space, or just sit down in general, be it to eat or whatever. They couldn't do that. It was against the law. And the reason why is because, people were stealing purses and all that other kind of stuff. So they decided it'd be a good idea to make a law against it, and therefore it's against the law to hang your purse on the back of your chair. When it comes to Japan, and seeing, for instance, some of the rules that they have, some of the ways that they work, understand that, for instance, these very small islands where people are living very close to each other by comparison, it is very easy to imagine how a thing like smallpox could have easily wiped out half or more of the population. The rules and principles and the culture were educated by this event. So not just their practices for social hygiene and stuff like that, but what may have started in that time as this is a rule to make sure we don't have smallpox again, and understood as that, can become over time the culture of, no, this is just what we do because it's the right thing to do. And understand that there are so many things that are going to be different the more you learn about the culture, the more you learn about the people. There's going to be so many things that are going to be different to you, but that's because your experience and your country's experience is not the same as theirs. And some of the rules and principles and beliefs that you have are going to make sense where you're at, but they're not going to make sense over there. And if you ever went over there and met the people and started learning about them, you'd understand how the things that they have that are done a certain way are oftentimes rooted in it being the best way to do it there. So all that to say, as the saying goes, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Understand we're stepping into Rome and talking about Romans. So all of this may not make sense to you here in the West. But understand it doesn't always have to in order for it to be the best thing to do or to make sense there. Okay. So, smallpox epidemic comes in, wipes out half of the population. They had a ruling class. They had emperors. They had a government, so to speak, that was centered around a ruling class, a ruler, a emperor, and their nobles, and all that other kind of stuff. And when this smallpox epidemic came in and took over, that's when we see that the centralized power began to infight among themselves, like the people that were in power, be it the emperor, those that are around him, the dukes, the duchesses, equivalents, those nobles and the nobility. They all began to fight against each other and fight among each other, and this infighting led to smaller regions taking care of their own things. They took control of their own areas to defend from attacks and attack others to try to gain power. So this, we'll say, this deep stabilizing event of the smallpox epidemic naturally caused an uproar and an upturning of society, and we start to see what will later become the structure of government that makes the soil and the ground in which the Tosa is conceptualized. But we're not there yet. So, throughout the Heian period, the power of the imperial court declined. The court became so self-absorbed with power struggles and with the artistic pursuits of the court nobles that it neglected the administration of government outside of the capital. Various noble families and religious orders succeeded in securing tax-exempt status for their private manors. Now, these manors were called shoin. S-H-O-E-N. This is a word that, as best as I can understand, is intended to describe those manors. Consider it the same as the, if you look at English history, the fiefs and fiefdoms and the lord of the land with their land that they owned, and the people that lived on that land were not the land owners, they were serfs and you know, just people that lived there. They were not the landowners. So these shoin are the manors. They are the land parcels or the land sects that are owned by the daimyo, or what would ultimately become the daimyo. We'll get into that in a bit. But anyway, shoin. So by the 11th century, more land in Japan was controlled by shoin owners than by the central government. It's interesting. The imperial court was thus deprived of the tax revenue to pay for its national army. In response, the owners of the shoin set up their own armies of warriors. Two powerful noble families that had descended from branches of the imperial family, the Taira, I say it that way, T-A-I-R-A, the Taira and Minamoto clans acquired large armies and many manors outside of the capital. The central government began to use these two warrior clans to suppress rebellions and piracy. Japan's population stabilized during the late Heian period after hundreds of years of decline. So, for those of you who are following and you watch anime and stuff like that, if you've seen Naruto, okay, think pre-village of the, pre-village hidden in the leaves, that era when everybody was divided up by clans and they were being used to fight against each other by the feudal lords. And there's these two clans, the Taira and the Minamoto clan, which would be the equivalent of the, what's their face with the eyes? You know who I'm talking about. I don't know how I forgot it. The Uchiha. There we go. All right. This would be the equivalent of the Uchiha clan and the Senju clan, right? With the first Hokage. So when it comes to it, the way that is structured and designed and expressed in the show completely explains this period. You guys are probably having no problem following that much. Maybe it's not very clear the way I'm explaining it, but that's exactly what it is. That's what's going on. And Naruto is kind of based off of that time period. So when it comes to it, as we'll see, actually, ninjas are also around. If they existed in this time period. Or should I say rather in the time period of the samurai. So when it comes to what is going on here, you guys are probably good. For those of you who don't watch anime and aren't familiar with this kind of setup, again, a good analogy would be that period in England where there were lords that owned the lands and they ran their lands however they saw fit. They made their own armies and had their own people to fight for them. That's where the knights came from what I understand, and so on and so forth, right? Similarly, as we'll see, the samurai came from the same sort of setup in Japan. And as far as I can tell, these two didn't influence each other. Nobody in England looked at Japan and said, hey, I want to structure our country like that. And nobody in Japan did the same thing for England, from what I could tell. It was just the way that it kind of came up, interestingly enough. So, in this period, we have the makings of what would create the need for the samurai and how they came to be. Let it be understood that a lot of what you need to learn when it comes to the Tosa in order to make a future for them is not just the what's, it's the why. And with the why, you can go all the way back to the origin of the Earth, origin of the planet. I'm trying to keep it as tight as I can while being as inclusive as I can as well, to try to prove the same points many different ways. Hopefully that'll make sense as we get towards the end of this series. But for now, just know we're spreading our net wide and far, okay? So anyway, continuing on. At the end of this period, we see the population stabilizing. We see a lot of things starting to go good, and a lot of that came through those daimyo, those feudal lords, those landowners, those shogun owners, essentially taking matters into their own hands. So, moving on to my next bullet point. During the early Heian period, the imperial court successfully consolidated its control over the Emishi people of northern Honshu. So, I'm going to try to pull up a map and kind of point this out on a map. But essentially, if you look at the island of Japan, that crescent moon shape, we're talking about the upper part, way up, the furthest north main island. And we're talking about just the top half of that. So back before we got too far into the smallpox, reducing the population and all that other kind of stuff, there is a great effort by the imperial court to control all of the country, all of the island. They have to take it all under power, and they can't have these people who are living up there autonomously and of their own power, just running and doing their own thing. That's not going to be cool, right? So what they do is they go ahead and they get their armies that they then had to take over the people in the north. These people in the north are kind of like they're Aboriginal people. They're tribal people. They are not primitive and not anything less than any other people. That's not what I'm saying. But they are Aboriginal kind of tribal people. These are people that are descendants from the oldest people to ever live on this island. And as you see, Japan is being taken over by these immigrants who've come to Japan and are starting to take it over. They've set up their imperial court and so on and so forth. When it comes to these people that are up in the north, these Emishi people, it is excruciatingly important to include these people for a couple of different reasons, and as we'll see, we'll get to that in a bit. I just got back home. I'm gonna get inside and say hello to my wife, give her smoochies. We'll continue this later tonight, probably inside the house, and we'll talk about it from there. But for now, just know this is where we're leaving off. The Emishi people. Look them up. Thank you guys so very much for checking out our channel, for watching our videos. I hope I wasn't too boring. Thank you for following us or watching us. If you do not already follow us, please follow. If you have not liked this video, please like, and please subscribe, and you'll be able to keep up with the next videos we put out about Tosas. We love what we do here. There'll definitely be more videos, and you can learn a bit more about the breed, learn a bit more about us, and hopefully it'll be stuff that you'll find useful. One other thing I would say is that if you can, please share our information. I know a lot of people will say share, but for us it's actually more important. You may not know this, but the Tosa is what we might consider an endangered species here in the US and even in the West. I would say the place that the place that the Tosa is right now is not unlike the place where the pit bull was in the mid-50s throughout the 70s, in that they no longer are used for their original purpose here in the US. Thank God. They are not used for their original purpose. So that kind of leaves a vacuum. The breed's notoriety is going down in that vacuum, but what that opens the door for is for bad actors to get a hold of what remaining specimens there are and use them for, we'll say, nefarious purposes. And when it comes to it, this is a wonderful breed. We just barely got the pit bull to where it's like 50-50 publicity, right? I'd hate for the Tosa to be the next dog everybody hates. So please share as much as you can. Get the information out there about the breed. It took so long for the pit bull to make a comeback, not because of breeding and responsible breeding practice. No, there's always been people that have been breeding pit bulls responsibly. What it took was having people in their corner, advocates, people who could stand up and say, that's not the way pit bulls act in reality. That's a dog that's been abused. That's a dog that's been mistreated. That's a dog that's been mistrained. And that can happen to any breed.
you know? And the more that those people get out there, the more you see the pit bull coming out in a better light, you know? Unfortunately, it's still got a long way to go, but that was the change. And the same thing is true for the Tosa. We need people who are going to get out there and say, hey, look, that behavior right there, that's not a Tosa. This, that, the other thing, that's not Tosa behavior. This is an example of an unfortunate set of circumstances that befell an individual dog. It is not what is to be expected of the breed as a whole. So when it comes to it, I think it's super important that you share, even more than liking and subscribing, which would be awesome. But share so that the information gets out there and more people learn the truth about the Tosa. All of it, not just the fighting past, but where they are today and where they're heading. Hopefully, more people will see this, more people will share, and the information will be out there. Again, you don't necessarily have to want to get a Tosa yourself, but learn about the breed. We need more advocates. Hopefully, some people watching this will find that true and become an advocate for this wonderful, amazing breed. Thank you guys so much for your time. We'll let you go and enjoy your life and let Mr. Dante get on to his kibble for the day.